Okay, we will make a start. And so again, thank you for joining everybody. I'm Marcus Idle. I'm one of the practice heads at Third Space. And I've got my colleague Joe also on the call, who will introduce himself a little bit later. And we're going to talk about how to simplify access, reduce risk, and stay compliant in the new era of work. In other words, identity governance for short. Okay, so first of all, let's look at the problem that we're trying to solve. Why do we need identity governance in our lives, in our organizations? One of the reasons is privileged roles. So we may have too many users with too much privilege, and we need to kind of rein it in a little bit. We might not have a vast number of users with that kind of privilege, but we might still want to audit all of the kind of privileged actions that they're performing on our directory. And we might have a desire to reduce the attack surface. So even if we have admins who carry out their duties perfectly, we obviously have a larger attack surface if we have more admins, more passwords to hack and so on. Another reason is our identity and access management system might have just got unwieldy. So sometimes referred to as spaghetti IDAM. So for example, access rules and exceptions to access rules, and there could be a proliferation of security groups. So we've got customers with many thousands of security groups, many of which had a purpose when they were created, which may have now morphed into something else. And we need to understand and curb that. And then we may have too many users in our directory that we don't understand. So we don't understand why they're in the directory or what access they have. So again, groups can be bloated. We might want to understand the legal relationship we have with our users and make sure that they tick a terms and conditions box when they first come into the directory, especially guest users. So it's these kinds of problems that we're trying to solve. And we're going to talk about 3 different tools today for doing this. And I'm going to just cover Azure Active Directory. And as you can see, we're going to talk about a number of features that these tools provide to address the problems that I've just discussed. And Azure AD covers a certain amount. So it's definitely a case of understanding what your need is and then understanding the right tool for the job. So I won't go through all of these, but in fact, we're going to talk about the last 2 ticks in particular, access certification and access request, which in Azure AD are called access reviews and access packages, just to complicate things. And if you sign into Azure AD as an administrator and you have a P2 license, you'll get a page that looks like this. So these are the kind of 3 pillars of Azure identity governance. I'm not going to talk too much about the last one, privileged identity management, as it's been around a lot longer than the first 2. But just in brief, that addresses the first set of problems on my previous slide, the problems of administrators with too much access. So with privileged identity management, you reduce the access down to the level of a normal user until such time as an administrator wants to carry out a highly privileged task, like deleting a user, for example. And it not only reduces the attack surface by reducing the times that somebody is an administrator, but it also creates an audit trail. So other administrators have reports of who's asked for what and what actions they've carried out. But we'll go on to talk about entitlement management and access reviews in a little bit more detail. So entitlement management, with this, you have something called access packages. So you create access packages to bundle up sets of access to resources. So these can be security groups, applications, or even SharePoint site. So it goes to that level of granularity. And any of these three groups of people, so members, which are your internal users, your staff, guests who have been invited in, or even external users who have not yet been invited into your directory, all of these people can apply for access packages or be granted access packages. So in the last case, it's a very good way of inviting people in, as opposed to the standard, very kind of IT-centric way of adding a user by sending an invite to their email address, or the very open scenario you have where if you open it up for your users to invite them using SharePoint or Teams, it's not very controlled. So this is a way for them to have one route into accessing your applications or your groups, and that route is via an access package request. So they make a request via a particular web page, and that can go through an approval process. So these approvals, if you have lots of guest users from one organization and you don't want to manage those users, you have a main contact at that external organization who can manage them, then that person can be an approver. So you can have an external approver, or you can have an internal approver, or you can actually have two stages of approval. So you can, it's very flexible how you can manage these access package requests and approvals. And obviously, once they've been approved, the applications they have access to are now visible, excuse me, on their My Apps dashboard on Microsoft. So it's a very easy integrated way of inviting them in and making sure they have approval. Not only that, but when you remove the access package, obviously all of those resources are removed. And if they're the last, if that's the last access package they've had access to, then their user account is removed. So it's nice and neat. So why use entitlement management? Obviously, you may not want to wait for a bottleneck for these invitations. So previously, if you had invitations, that was the bottleneck. The inviter was the bottleneck. But in this case, you have a way for everybody to request access, and you may have more than one approver, so you don't create that bottleneck. And of course, as I said, it's a way of packaging up access. So some users will only need one access package, which gives them all the resources they need. And after they've finished with those resources, you can tie up the loose ends. So on to access reviews. So these are a way of periodically checking that the access you've put in place is the right access. So again, you've got a set of users who these can apply to. We're going to talk about licensing a little bit later, so bear in mind. So the users of these features, these identity governance features in Azure, need P2 licenses. But if the person doing the reviewing is the group owner, you only need P2 licenses for those group owners. So what happens is there's an entitlement. There's somebody has access to something, and the group owners, the group members themselves, the individuals, or just some arbitrary users that you can choose, they're emailed with an access review. And you can do this on a regular basis. Their response to the review then affects what happens next. So, for example, you can just report and say so-and-so declined access or so-and-so didn't respond, or you can choose to execute that, so to remove them from the group, for example, if they ignore the email or decline access. So in summary, what can you do? You can require a reason on approval. You can enable or disable the user, or just report on it. The reviewers can be the selected users, as I said, or the owners of the group, or they can be self-review if you trust the individuals to review themselves. And you can choose just to review B2B guest users or anyone in the group. And in terms of timing, so you can create these on a regular basis, or you can have a start and end date to the reviews. And for example, you could do it once a quarter and have a 2-week period at the end of the quarter where people have the opportunity to respond to that email. So obviously, these address all sorts of problems. So you might have external users accessing your organizational resources who don't have good joiner, movers, leavers processes in their own organization. So you need to be a bit more on the ball as to kind of managing their access. You might have too many users in privileged roles, of course, that just need oversight from time to time. Automation might be unfeasible, so you need to have this manual review process where somebody gets an email in front of them to tell them to review this user. And of course, when you're repurposing groups, you might need to review everybody as a kind of one-off. So that concludes the summary of Azure identity governance features. And I'm just going to hand over to Joe now.
Thank you, Marcus. That's very interesting. I'm just going to take control. You would, and we carry on. So yeah, so Marcus has covered the core functionality for governance in Azure AD, and you need some level of P2 licensing to be able to do this. It's important to know that with the next two tools that I'm going to present, that's not necessarily the case. You might need P2 licensing for other reasons, but not for these tools' functionality. So the first one is Software IDM. It's a company called Software IDM, and they have a product which we'll be looking at. And the second one is a company called Savient, and we'll take a look at that in a second. Oops. Okay, so the particular product that covers governance in the Software IDM arsenal is called Access Panel. It relies on another one of their solutions to be able to work, and that other solution is called Identity Panel. And the company came into being with Identity Panel, really, which extends the reporting capability and control environment and health checks and so on for Microsoft Identity Manager. That's where it came from. That's since been expanded beyond all recognition, and so Access Panel provides the governance aspects of this thing. So it leverages Identity Panel's connector integration. So Identity Panel basically sits on top of or instead of another identity management solution and connects to all your resources. So HR, Active Directory, Azure Active Directory, LDAP, generic LDAP directories, Microsoft 365, your line of business applications, and your HR authoritative source, and your service solutions, so ServiceNow and so on. And so it can give you a complete picture of a user's access throughout your organization and provide more functionality besides. Those capabilities, it can provide role-based access control, because you need to go through the process of defining those roles and what access they provide. More commonly, we see people using attribute-based access control. So based on the information we know about you from the authoritative source, so say HR and possibly other sources as well, we can determine what access you should have and automatically assign it. We can do just-in-time access provisioning, which is part of the dual-pronged approach to governance from a security point of view. The other is just enough access, of course. And if you want to know more about that aspect of things, then there's a webinar I've done previously, which is accessible from our website. So we also get request handling similar to the core Azure AD functionality. So we can make a request to access resources. We have some quite sophisticated workflow behind this with Software IDM, and the approval flow can be via email or SMS or directly through a web interface. So Software IDM also provide attestation or recertification capabilities in their product. And so they call them access reviews. The difference between this and the situation Marcus was describing is that we're able to do risk modeling in software IDM, and so therefore when we're looking at your users access or who's accessing a specific resource, we can take risk into account of somebody being able to access that resource. We can also define access expiry, so we can do a simple form of privileged access management by providing somebody access to a resource for a specific time period. Okay, so we'll extend the comparison chart that Marcus started with Azure AD, and we can see there's some considerable overlap between software IDM capabilities and Azure AD, but then we go on to expand those capabilities into fine-grained entitlements, so we can see more deeply into the access people have. We've got compliance and audit reporting, we've got workflows and approvals, and we've got this risk analysis of user entitlements. I'm pretty sure as well that the separation of duties or segregation of duties, which is currently unticked, is a work in progress and will appear quite shortly from the software IDM solution. So it's a brief summary of software IDM. Savient is ups the game somewhat. So it is a quite complex and full governance solution, which also happens to do identity and access management, but a lot more besides. So let's take a look at that. So what Savient did, the company formed in around 2010, and before they released their product, they did a lot of analysis to see what they thought was missing from current identity management governance solutions. So the left-hand column, there's some things they identified that most solutions didn't give at that time. So we've looked at the Microsoft solution, which tells you what privileges users have and allows you to review those accesses. What we don't know is how they got them. So this is what Savient fills in the details for. So how did they get the privileges? If it was by attribute-based access control or role-based access control, we can tell that. If it was via a request and approval mechanism, we can see that as well. So who approved the access and when they approved it. On top of that, we can look at what they can do with the privileges. So it's all very well being a member of a group or having access to a resource, but what does that actually mean? And so Savient can provide those extra details. So if you have this, then you can do this. Okay. We can also see what other things they have access to, and we'll look in the right-hand column in a minute and see why that differs to what we can get to with software IDM and Microsoft. We can also do peer analysis, so in a nice way and a governance way. So we can do in-layer analysis. So we can say, look, everybody else that looks like you in your department with your job title at this geographic location has this access. You don't have it. You probably should. Okay. And we can do outright analysis, saying you are looking at requesting this access. Nobody else that looks like you has it, so it's unlikely it will be approved. So think carefully or make some good justification why you think you should have this access. And on top of that, we get real-time risk analysis. So if you've got making a request, you can see the chances of getting approval or not with a simple thumbs up or thumbs down symbol. When you get an approval to handle, you get all the information you need. So we get the in-layer and outlier analysis, but you also get the risk analysis of making this approval. So it could be that you will contravene a separation of duties rule if you do it, or other stuff. Okay. So in the right-hand side, we expand out on not just looking at Azure AD, but to have a hybrid environment. So the tooling Marcus was looking at was for Azure. So Savient and software IDM can do a hybrid environment, so on-premise and cloud-based deployments, and give you a single pane of glass to look at them. So Savient can also do multi-vendor cloud environments, so it can handle Azure, Amazon Web Services, and Google Cloud Platform, and we have customers that use 2 out of 3 of those typically. And it also addresses the compliance requirements, so attestation, the same as the other 2, but it can do cross-vendor segregation of duties. So you may have somebody can do something in Salesforce that you should prevent them from doing something in SAP, for instance. And also they noticed that with attestation recertification, you do it periodically. And so they reasoned that if you have to do a certification campaign every 6 months, then in between campaigns, in fact, immediately following a campaign, you could be out of compliance and you won't know about it for another 6 months. So they have a concept of modeling compliance frameworks, so like Sarbanes-Oxley, GDPR, and so on, and HIPAA. And you can load in a set of compliance rules into the solution, and it will continuously monitor compliance against those frameworks. Okay. And finally, it's cross-platform. So we can do cross-platform monitoring for segregation of duty and so on. So people now, instead of just buying a solution from one organization, will pick best of breed as far as they're concerned. So they may have a mixture of SAP, Oracle Business Suite, Salesforce, and Workday, and ServiceNow, and so on. So we can handle all of those and give you a complete picture of what's happening. Microsoft and Savient have a very close working relationship, with Savient frequently collaborating with Microsoft Identity Engineering and the security product groups. It's a cloud-born solution. It was always designed to work in the cloud, and you get the choice to host it in either Azure or Amazon Web Services. And it provides visibility into how your assets are being used through a single pane of glass, a seamless platform. So they're Savient members of the Intelligence Security Association, which is organized by Microsoft. They're a MTC preferred security solution, so Microsoft Technology Center, if you know what that means. So if you're a customer and you're looking to investigate a specific area, then Microsoft will invite you into one of their technology centers to look at what capabilities are with Microsoft products, but Savient is also part of that demonstration suite. It's a preferred Azure Marketplace solution, so you can purchase it using the Azure Marketplace. And as you'd expect, it's a leader in the Gartner Magic Quadrant, and also it is compliant with all the usual certifications for a hosted solution. Specifically integrated with Microsoft are Azure AD, Microsoft 365, Dynamics, and Azure. And we're going to look at an example of one of these things, which is inside Microsoft 365 stable, which is Teams. So a lot of people have been deploying Teams recently because of the situation over the last 4 or 5 months. And Teams is not a single solution. When you create a team and create channels in that team and give people access either internally or externally to those channels, you're actually also providing them with access to SharePoint sites and other things you may not be aware of. So let's home in on what that means. So just for the teams, Microsoft provides global settings, user configuration for users to create teams, and templates to define policies for team channels. And you manage this using a combination of PowerShell and Graph API. There's some basic reporting for external access, but they have limited automation to do that. And nor they have views into entitlement hierarchies, so which you probably will require for compliance. So giving somebody access to a channel in a team may give them access to the underlying SharePoint sites, but may inadvertently give them access to other stuff that's not immediately obvious. And that's where Savient steps in. So it provides a Teams dashboard, provides actionable insights into risks with the Teams deployment. What that means is from the dashboard, if you see a compliance problem, you can, or through the same interface, you can action a response to it. So you can say this user shouldn't have this access, or shouldn't have access at all, and that will go ahead and be actioned, so they get removed or the access adjusted. We also, in Savient solution, get a process for Teams channels creation. And so they, to ensure that they're approved by the appropriate people and they're governed by the attributes of the users in a dynamic model, a bit like dynamic groups, but better. We also enforce ownership of channels in Teams, and also the succession handling. So if somebody is an owner of one or more channels and they leave or change roles, and then Savient can spot that and execute a workflow for somebody else to take over, either direct the team ownership to a central identity management resource, which can then take the appropriate action, or figure out who's taking over that role and allocate them the ownership. We also got the concept of birthright entitlements. So we can work out from attribute values from your source, authoritative source for users, so HR systems, student administration systems, and so on, what entitlements you should have on the basis of those values. So it could be a job role, a geographic location, department, and so on. And again, we've got quite a comprehensive reporting solution, which provide actionable reports. So the same meaning as we had at the top. So you get a report, it shows you a attestation problem, and you can immediately rectify that by disabling users access or modifying users access to get rid of the separation of duties violation or whatever it is you spotted. So the concept in Savient is we have an intelligent identity hub. Gives you a single pane of glass to view everything. So your internal resources, your external resources, your internal users, your external users, on-premise, in the cloud, multi-cloud platforms, so Amazon Web Services, Azure, Google, and multi-platform enterprise applications, so SAP, Oracle E-Business Suite, and so on, multiple HR solutions, and so on. So it gives you a very good visibility of what's happening from a single place. It's powered with machine learning. They say artificial intelligence, I say machine learning. We'll see who wins. So that means it can effectively learn what's going on. It'll cover not only human access, but also bots and service accounts and all that good stuff. So it's designed completely to give you fast results when you subscribe to it. So we have some networking work to do. We have some connectivity work to do to connect up to your identity repositories and your source. And it's a SaaS application, so we need to sort that networking stuff out. But once that's all done, which doesn't take that long, and we get identities into the Savient solution, along with the entitlements of the target systems, we can pretty soon get some very interesting and useful results for our governance solution. So it's a big product, it's a big solution. We can split it down to better understand it into 5 pillars. So we've got infrastructure access governance, so this is DevOps, SecOps, and so on. We can provide lifecycle management and privileged access management in that pillar. We've got data access governance, where we can do content classification, so we can spot national insurance numbers and credit card numbers and monetary values and so on, and then assign a risk to that. Again, identity lifecycle management and privileged access management in that environment. We do enterprise application access governance, so we can apply segregation of duties to those applications inside them, like SAP, or across different enterprise applications. So we, as I said before, we might have something that conflicts. If you got some rights in Salesforce, you might not want to give other rights in SAP. We've got usage analytics, so we can determine whether the right licensing is applied to users. Are they using everything that they get from their particular license assignment, or could we save money by reducing their level of access? We've got emergency or break glass access, and we've got continuous controls modeling, monitoring, as I said before. That's if you've loaded the frameworks in, you can do that. If you have to comply with the framework we don't cover at the moment, then we have a situation where we can work with you, bring that governance framework into Savient so that you can use it, but then Savient will package that and release it to the general public for use elsewhere. We've got external and customer access governance, which we have seen scales to millions of users, and we've got cloud privileged access governance, which is a self-contained part of the whole solution. So you can request access for a specific time to a specific resource, and when you get that access approved, the access is controlled via Savient, so we can record all your keystrokes and all the results coming back the other way. So native cloud technology is used, and they refer to it as PAM as a service. So this slide, the important part is the last bullet point, if you like, last mile provisioning. So the entitlement management is very, very fine-grained inside Savient. So you can both control access to and report on transaction code level in SAP, for instance. So rather than just giving you an account and some broad brush access, then it is really fine-grained. So this is, you can look at this at your leisure. So Savient brings a lot of stuff to the Microsoft stable. Microsoft like them, and they are enable you to safely deploy Microsoft technologies in your environment and in this current situation. So to expand on that chart again, they look very similar, Software ADM and Savient, but it doesn't tell the whole story. Savient's got sort of super capabilities, not to put Software ADM down. They can do a lot of stuff, and of course there is a price differential, but we can advise you on the best solution for your requirements. Call to action: you can get expert advice from us tailored to your requirements. Begin your journey for secure identity management and discover the latest cybersecurity solutions and how they can help you. So we offer a variety of solutions. There is a handout which you can get, which is for our envisioning workshop for identity governance administration. We also do other workshops and other solutions which may be able to help you. So feel free to get in touch. Finally, thank you, and we hope to see you again soon. Keep safe.